هلا والله واهلا وسهلا فيكم. عمر معاكم هنا. خصصت حلقة اليوم عشان نتكلم عن اعظم مستثمر في العالم. طبعا في الفترة الاخيرة طلعوا كم مستثمر جديد يفكروا نفسهم من الاعظم. طبعا هدول المستثمرين ممتازين وحنتطرق عليهم في حلقات قادمة، بس ما في احد زي هذا الرجال. هذا الرجل صاحب شركة بريكشر هاثوي اللي تملك ابل، جزء من ابل، جزء من امازون، جزء من بانك اوف امريكا، جزء من امريكان اكسبرس، جزء من كوكا كولا، جزء من كرافت، جزء من جايكو. الرجال ما خلى شركة الا واستثمر فيها، واستثماراته على المدى الطويل. الشخص اللي بتكلم عنه هو وارن بافيت. وارن بافيت يعتبر اهم واعظم مستثمر في العالم. استطاع هذا الرجل انه يرجع متوسط عوائد، تخيلوا متوسط عوائد 20% سنويا، مقارنة بالمؤشر الداو جونز أو S&P 500 اللي رجع 10% فقط. تقولوا فرق بس 10%. هذا الفرق 10% فرق كبير جدا مع موضوع الكومباوند انترست. واللي ما شاف إيش يعني كومباوند انترست يروح للحلقة الأولى ويشوف إيش معنى الكومباوند انترست. خليني أسهلها لكم، وأنا عارفكم أنتوا تحبوا الأرقام. خليني أسهل لكم هي واديكم أرقام. إذا استثمرت $100 في شركة بريكشر هاثوي أول ما طرحت الشركة، تخيلوا كان عندك اليوم $2.8 مليون. وإذا أخذت هذه $100 واستثمرتها في S&P 500 أو الداو جونز، كان اليوم عندك $18,000. شايفوا الفرق بين 10%؟ هذا بسبب الكومباوند انترست رفع الرقم بهذا الشكل الرهيب. خلينا نخش بلب موضوع حلقة اليوم، قواعد هذا الرجل الاستثمارية وأهم نقاطه عند الاستثمار. القاعدة الأولى: استثمر في نفسك لأنه ما حد يقدر ياخد منك علمك.
Well, by far the best investment you can make is in yourself. I mean, for example, communication skills. I tell the students that come that they're going to graduate schools and business and they're learning all these complicated formulas and all that. If they just learn to communicate better, and both in writing and in person, they increase their value at least 50%. If I gave you a car and it'd be the only car you get in the rest of your life, you take care of it like you can't believe. Any scratch, you'd fix that moment. You read the owner's manual, you keep a garage and do all these things. And you get exactly one mind and one body in this world. And you can't start taking care of it when you're 50. By that time, you'll have rusted out if you haven't done anything. So you should really make sure that you just remember that you just got one mind and body to get through life with and to do the most with it. You know, the most important thing, aside from the things I've talked about already, is really who you associate with. You want to associate with people that are better than you are. I mean, basically, you'll go in the direction of the people that you associate with, and you want to have the right heroes. You want people, if you want to emulate somebody, you better pick very carefully who you want to emulate.
القاعدة الثانية: لا تخسر فلوسك عند الاستثمار. وهذه نقطة دائما أبغى أدقق فيها، لأنه كثير من الفيديوهات اللي يتكلموا عن الاستثمار يقول لك في بداية المشوار تعلم واخسر فلوسك. أنا ضد هذه القاعدة تماما، لأنه الشخص لما يبدأ مسيرته في الاستثمار بالطريقة الخطأ حتبدأ عنده هاجس الخوف من الاستثمار، وحتعمل عنده السيكولوجية إنه يخاف يستثمر ويغامر أكثر عشان يعوض خساراته. فخلينا نمشي بقاعدة وارن بافيت: لا تخسر الفلوس أبدا.
The first rule in investment is don't lose. And the second rule in investment is don't forget the first rule. And that's all the rules there are. I mean, that if you buy things for far below what they're worth and you buy a group of them, you basically don't lose money.
القاعدة الثالثة: خلي نفسك طويل واستثمر على المدى الطويل.
1942, when I bought my first stock, as an illustration of all the things that have happened since 1942. We've had 14 presidents, 7 Republicans, 7 Democrats. We've had world wars. We had 9/11. We had the Cuban Missile Crisis. We have all kinds of things. The best single thing you could have done on March 11th, 1942, when I bought my first stock, was just buy an index fund and never look at a headline, never think about stocks anymore, just like you would do if you bought a farm. You just buy the farm and let the tenant farmer run it for you. And I pointed out that if you'd put $10,000 in an index fund that reinvested dividends, and I paused for a moment to let the audience try and guess how much it amount to, and it would come to $51 million now. And the only thing you had to really believe in then is that America would win the war and that America would progress as it has ever since 1776. And that American business, if America moved forward, American business would move forward. You didn't have to worry about what stock to buy. You didn't have to worry what day to get in and out.
استثمر بعقلك ودراسة الشركات ولا تستثمر بالحماس والأحاسيس والإشاعات.
You don't need a lot of brains in this business. I mean, I've always said if you got an IQ of 160, give away 30 points to somebody else because you don't need it in investments. What you do need is emotional stability. You have to be able to think independently, and you have to be when you come to a conclusion, you have to really not care what other people say and just follow the facts and follow your reasoning. And that's tough for a lot of people. That part I think I was just lucky with. I was born that way.
In terms of emotions, it's a truism that investing emotions are your enemy.
Absolutely.
That when the market's good, if you feel good, don't. If you feel bad, you should probably do it.
Right.
But how did you? What was that extra thing where so many will acknowledge that, and yet we saw in the current crisis they panicked while you went into seemingly potential disasters like GE and Goldman Sachs.
Yeah. I can't really tell you I mean, I didn't learn in school or anything. It never bothered me if people disagreed with what I thought, as long as I felt I knew the facts. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things I don't know a thing about. I just stay away from those. So I stay within what I call my circle of competence. You know, Tom Watson said it best. He said, I'm no genius, but I'm smart in spots, and I stay around those spots. Well, I try and stay around those spots, and I just don't have a problem if somebody says, you're wrong on something. I go back and look at the facts, and I think that really is much more important, frankly, than having a few points of IQ or having an extra course or two in school or anything of the sort. You need emotional stability.
The answer is that investors behave in very human ways, which is they get very excited during bull markets, and they look in the rearview mirror and they say, I made money last year, I'm going to make more money this year, so this time I'll borrow, or the neighbor says, I wasn't in last year when that neighbor was dumber than I made a lot of money, so I'm going to go in this year. So they're always looking in the rearview mirror. And when they look in the rearview mirror and they see a lot of money having been made in the last few years, they plow in and they just push and push and push on prices. And when they look in the rearview mirror and they see no money having been made, they just say, this is a lousy place to be. So they don't care what's going on in the underlying business. And it's astounding, but that makes for a huge opportunity.
القاعدة الخامسة، أنت بتشتري شركة مو سهم. سعر سهم الشركة طلع أو نزل لا يعني قيمة الشركة. ما يؤثر على قيمة الشركة هي إيراداتها وأرباحها.
Warren, what do you do that's different than 90% of the money managers who are in the market?
Certainly most of the professional investors focus on what the stock is likely to do in the next year or two, and they have all kinds of arcane methods of approaching that, but they do not really think of themselves as owning a piece of a business. The real test of whether you're investing from a value standpoint or not is whether you care whether the stock market is open tomorrow. If you're making a good investment in a security, it shouldn't bother you if they close down the stock market for 5 years. All the ticker tells me is the price. Yeah. And I can look at the price occasionally to see whether the price is outlandishly cheap or outlandishly high. But prices don't tell me anything about a business. Business figures themselves tell me something about a business, but the price of a stock doesn't tell me anything about a business. I would rather value a stock or a business first and not even know the price, so that I'm not influenced by the price in establishing my valuation.
القاعدة السادسة، استثمر في شركات ذو مقومات صعب منافستها. يعني شركات ما حد يقدر ينافسها، عندها مقومات النجاح.
At Berkshire Hathaway, we have all kinds of businesses. We own 73 businesses now, and in businesses, we're looking for an entity that has durable competitive advantage, somebody that not only is doing well now, but will do well 10 or 20 years from now. And in capitalism, when you have a wonderful business, it's like having an economic castle. And the nature of capitalism is that people want to come in and take your castle. It's perfectly understandable. I mean, if I'm selling television sets or something, there's going to be 10 other people that are going to try and sell a better television set. If I have a restaurant here in Omaha, people are going to try and copy my menu and give more parking and take my chef and so on. So capitalism's all about somebody coming and trying to take the castle. Now, what you need is you need a castle that has some durable competitive advantage, some castle that has a moat around it. And that moat, one of the best moats in many respects, is to be a low-cost producer. But sometimes the moat is just having more talent. I mean, if you're the heavyweight champion of the world and you keep knocking out people, you've got a competitive advantage as long as you can keep doing it. And it's very profitable if you're the one that happens to be able to do it. If you can turn out great motion pictures, I mean, you know, Steven Spielberg, I mean, he's a fellow to bet on, and it has enormous economic value. Well, we're looking for that institutionalized. We're not looking for the best brain surgeon in town. We're looking for the Mayo Clinic. So we want an institution that, regardless of the person in charge, will maintain that competitive advantage over the decades. And we hope we find that in some businesses, and then we try to get the best person that we can to run them. Usually it's the person who's been running them.
Are you always right, or do you make mistakes?
No, we make mistakes. It wouldn't be any fun if we didn't make mistakes. I mean, if I went out and played golf and on every one of the 18 holes I hit a hole in one, I wouldn't be playing golf for very long. I mean, you have to go into the rough occasionally to make the game interesting, not too often though.
القاعدة السابعة، والكثير مننا سمع المثل اللي يقول لك كاش is king. أنا أقول لهم كاش is trash. الكاش استثمار فاشل. خلينا نسمع وارن بافيت إيش بيقول.
When you look at the future, there's also the argument made that this is something that goes with your philosophy today. Get out of cash and get into assets, because we don't know what's going to happen to the dollar.
Well, cash is always a bad investment. I mean, when people said cash is king a year ago, I mean, that's crazy. I mean, cash wasn't producing anything, and it was sure to go down in value over time. On the other hand, you always want to be sure you have enough. We will always have enough cash around. But anytime we have surplus cash around, I'm unhappy. I mean, I would much rather have good businesses than cash.
القاعدة الثامنة، وفي كثير من الناس ممكن يختلفوا على هذه القاعدة، بس مين يقدر يخالف العظيم وارن بافيت؟ الاستثمار في الذهب استثمار خاطئ، وأنا أتفق معاه بهذه النقطة، لأنه الذهب في النهاية ما عنده أرباح ولا عنده إيرادات، فارتفاع قيمة الذهب ونزول قيمة الذهب كلها إشاعات. فاللي بيطلعوا بالفيديوهات اللي تتكلم عن الذهب وارتفاع الذهب وانخفاض الذهب كله مبني على الإشاعات. خلينا نشوف وارن بافيت إيش بيتكلم عن الذهب.
I would say this about gold. If you took all of the gold in the world, it would roughly make a cube 67 feet on a side. So if you took all the gold in the world, we could have a cube that went down there 67 feet, 67 feet high, and that would be the whole thing. Now, for that same cube of gold, it would be worth at today's market prices about $7 trillion. That's probably about a third of the value of all the stocks in the United States. So you could have a choice of owning a third of all the stocks in the United States, or you could have a choice of owning that little block of gold, which can't do anything but kind of shine there and make you feel like Midas or Croesus or something of the sort. Now, for $7 trillion, there are roughly 1 billion acres of farmland in the United States. They're valued at about $2.5 trillion. It's about half the continental United States is farmland. You could have all of the farmland in the United States, you could have about 7 Exxon Mobils, and you could have $1 trillion of walking around money. And if you offered me the choice of looking at some 67-foot cube of gold and looking at it all day, you know, maybe touching it, and fondling it occasionally, you know, and then saying, you know, do something for me, and it says, I don't do anything, I just stand here and look pretty. And the alternative to that was to have all the farmland in the country, everything, cotton, corn, soybeans, 7 Exxon Mobils, just think of that. Add $1 trillion of walking around money. You know, maybe call me crazy, but I'll take the farmland and the Exxon Mobils.
القاعدة التاسعة للناس اللي في بداية مشوارهم في الاستثمار. اشتري المؤشر العام الاندكس S&P 500 الداو جونز وريح راسك وخليه يتضاعف عبر الزمن. خلينا نسمع النصيحة الأخيرة لأعظم مستثمر في العالم وارن بافيت.
The S&P 500 index is fund is the one to use. That's the one I used in that bet I made for 10 years. It's the one I've told the trustee for my wife to put 90% of the funds I leave her into. The S&P 500 is, I don't know whether it's 80% of the market value of, of everything you can buy in this country. And it's over, I think it's over 20 trillion. And you're buying America. And let me give you a figure that'll blow your mind, I think. I bought my first stock when I was 11 years old. It was the first quarter of 1942, shortly after Pearl Harbor. I spent $114.75. Three shares, $114.75. If I put that 114 into the S&P 500 at that time and reinvested the dividends, think of a figure as to what it would be worth today.
Oh man!
Well, it's
okay,
but I just want your audience to think for a second.
Okay.
The answer is about $400,000. So if I, as a little kid, had taken that $114 I'd saved on shoveling snow or whatever I'd done, $400,000 today, one person's lifetime. That's America. I mean, that isn't me. It is the huge tailwind the American economy gives to any equity investor. Now, the market's gone down many times during that time. People have panicked during that time. Headlines have been terrible. It looked like we were losing the war when we first bought it. But America is a powerful economic machine that since 1776 has worked, and it's going to keep working. Now, you don't want to buy to hold for a year. You don't want to buy with the idea that you could sell it in 2 years or 3 years, necessarily make money. You could lose money that way. But if you buy it for 10, 20, just keep buying the S&P 500 index and forget about all the other nonsense that's being sold to you, because I'll guarantee you one thing about the stuff being sold to you.
We don't know if it's 400,000, but that same sort of process or returns won't happen starting right now.
The S&P 500 companies have earned well over 10% on equity, often 15% annually for years and years and years and years. They've done it with Democratic administrations, with Republican administrations. Now, you get money compounding at that kind of rate underlying your investment, and you get a diversified group of that. I mean, you're going to do well.
إن شاء الله تكونوا حبيتوا هذا الفيديو، وإن شاء الله تسمعوا قواعد هذا الرجل، لأنه صدقوني قواعد هذا الرجل يعني ستدرس لمئات السنين. حبيتوا الحلقة حطوا لايك وسبسكرايب، عندكم ملاحظات اكتبوها تحت في الكومنتس، وانتظركم في الحلقات القادمة. إلى اللقاء.